Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Gregory, and this is Accounting 614 Accounting Research. I want to go over topic 4, the last topic you have on researching financial statement analysis. Now, the purpose of this is to get you familiar with looking at SEC Form 10-Ks, not only the numbers in the financials, but also the notes and the disclosures to the financials, because oftentimes the numbers will present themselves the way they are, which is really great because they're objective, but you have to understand the story behind it. And so that's where you start getting into deeper research into that SEC Form 10K report. So we're going to look at publicly traded companies. So you have to locate a company that files its reports with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, because that will allow you to pull up SEC 10K annual reports. View my Accessing EDGAR video to identify a company and upload its SEC Form 10K report. Now, you may have to do 2 sets of reports, but we'll get to that in a minute. But what's required is your company must sell products. It can't sell just services. It has to sell products and must have inventory listed on its balance sheets. Now, there are 3 parts to the financial statement analysis. Part 1 is the summarization of the company you've chosen. Part 2 is developing and creating financial analysis using an Excel worksheet. Do not use a Word document with tables. Instead, use that Excel, because we want to see how well you can do an Excel worksheet. Part 3, you're going to be taking that analysis and creating strengths and weaknesses and ratio analysis of your company and compare it to your company's competitor. So you'll use the data that you did in the Excel worksheet to support your arguments. Part 1 is a Word document. Now, you must address all of the following at a minimum, and it's a minimum of 1 page. So don't just get down to the end of the page and say, okay, I'm done. You're going to have to write enough so that it is well articulated and I understand your company, even if it's a very well-known company. So what is the business? What industry is it in? What does it sell? Who are its main competitors, and try to list 2 competitors and why they are competitors. Don't just say, well, Walmart and Target are competitors of each other. Tell me why. What's their similarities? What makes them competitors in the market? In what geographical areas does it conduct business? And be much more specific than they conduct their business worldwide or they are a global company. Try to give me some examples, and you may have to go to the company website to see this, to find out where things are located, or it can be in the notes to the financial statements. Discuss cyclicality associated with its product sales. And why and what is cyclicality? And finally, include any other items relevant to this particular business or industry. For example, what has occurred in the industry, such as new competitors, maybe new products, legal or regulatory issues, or the effects of the pandemic. Part 2 is your Excel spreadsheet, and you're going to, each set of calculations are going to be its own tab, and I'll show you an example of that. You'll have a tab for horizontal analysis, vertical analysis, equity ratios, solvency ratios, profitability ratios. Now, remember, you're going to need 3 years worth of data. Your company's current SEC report might only have 2 years reported, so you may need to pull 2 full sets of the Form SEC 10K reports to get all of the data you need. You will also have a separate tab for your competitor company, which will include your choice of 4 of the ratios you calculated for your main company. So you're going to have a horizontal analysis of the prior 3 years' income statements and balance sheets. You're going to also do the same with a vertical analysis of the prior 3 years' income statements and balance sheets. Calculate the results for the prior 3 years using at least 3 liquidity ratios, 3 solvency ratios, and 3 profitability ratios. Then you're going to locate a competitor that is involved in the same business as your chosen company. Remember, we have to have 2 competitors, but of the 2 competitors in part 1, you're going to choose one of those and provide an analysis of the competitors' ratios using at least 4 of the ratios over the same 3 years that you calculated above for yours. You're going to list both the company and the competitors' ratios on the competitors tab for clarity. Now think about this. It's more than just creating ratios. Anybody can do that if they're given the proper knowledge and they know the formula. But you have to look at those ratios and look at what those ratios are made of. And what do these ratios tell you? And is the company that you've chosen performing better or worse than the competition based on these ratios? So you will use the ratios in part 2 to complete the part 3 Word document. Now, before we get to the part 3 Word document, let's jump a little bit more into what I'm looking for as far as formatting. Okay, so when we look at each worksheet, I want to see very clear labels along the bottom of each worksheet in your file that shows all of the different ratio analyses you are performing. Now, here's a sample of a spreadsheet. We can see in this example a portion of the balance sheet. And what this student did was put the ratio analysis next to the balance sheet. That's fine, but you're also going to have to put it again in your label. So it's easier to do that, or copy and paste your balance sheet into the ratio analysis and then perform your ratio analysis. So let's go over some of these a little bit closer. The first thing I want to do is show you what I'm looking for as far as the ratio analysis information. We want to identify each ratio. So under the liquidity ratio analysis, for example, ratio number 1 could be the current ratio. The second thing is to provide the full formula. The formula, current assets divided by current liabilities. Okay. Now in 3, identify the amounts in each row. So for each year that you're looking at, here are the current assets for 2021, 2020, and 2019. Then here are the current liabilities for 2021, 2020, and 2019. Let's look up again and take a look at the sample. Here we have our current assets. And then here we have our current liabilities. Now, once you have labeled your rows of data, you're going to then perform the calculation. Now, in step 4, you're going to embed the calculation or the results. For ratios, we only want 2 decimal places. So that's all you have to go out to, but you need to go out to 2 decimal places. And then you would do the same for ratio number 2. It could be maybe the acid test ratio, and maybe ratio number 3, which is another type of liquidity ratio. So this is what I am looking for in a good setup that allows me to follow it, and I'm not having to guess what it looks like. Now let's drill down just a little bit more on what I mean by embedding the calculation. Embedding allows me to see and assess your understanding of the use of the Excel worksheet. That's part of what we're looking at here. Can you use an Excel worksheet? You should be able to by now. So here are a couple of examples. And let me blow this up just a little bit more. So when we look at the formula of current assets to current liabilities in the liquidity ratio analysis, we see the current assets and we see the current liabilities. Then what we will see is if I click on what the ratio results should be, I should see something that looks like this. This is using the embedded cells in the formula. So it would be K14 divided by K15 equals the current ratio. I don't want to see 1.97 here because that doesn't tell me you know how to use the Excel worksheet. So here's another little example. When you are looking at developing your information, your data, your horizontal, vertical analysis, whatever, while you're going to put the data in, I want to see at the end of every single subtotal and total that formula. So I want to see formula embedded into the cell calculation for full credit. So enough about the Excel. Let's go over to the Word document now. Okay. Now the Word document in part 3 is going to use that data you did in part 2, compare and contrast your company to your competitor company using the ratio information that we've got. Which one is performing better or worse? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the company and the competitive company? So have the ratios increased or decreased within the 3 years? But go beyond the numbers. Don't just say the numbers have increased. The current ratio has increased. I don't know what that means. So you need to go beyond the numbers and point them out specifically. For example, in 2021, the current ratio for X company was 1.90 versus Y company, which was something else. Then take those numbers, look at the company financial results, either on the company website or in their SEC10K form, and find out what's going on. Why have these been changing? So not only look at some of the general circumstances, but look at the ratio and formula itself. What are the components of that ratio? And explain what the relationship should or should not be occurring. Now, you're going to have to include at least one graph or chart to help explain the ratios. Be sure you carefully label your chart or graph so I know what I'm looking at. If you just give me a chart with a bar chart, but I don't know which company this is for, and I don't know what the purpose of this graph is, you can't get any credit for it. In this section, I would like to see 1 to 2 pages as a minimum. Most likely, students are turning in about 2 pages, double spaced, in this section. Now, you can combine parts 1 and 3. You can create one Word document, and Just be sure to include the data results in the discussion, as I said before. And you can just separate out with the main header, part 1, then do the components of part 1, and then part 3, and then do the components of part 3. As I said before, don't simply state that one year was better than the other, or ask the reader to refer to the Excel file. Pretend you are giving this to your CEO of your company or your CFO of a company and provide that data for them. And here's some suggestions for your Word document. You'll need a cover sheet. Then I would type in part 1, company profile. Then I would have headers about the name of your company and some of its background, who are its competitors and why, and finally the cyclicality or the seasonality of the company. Then you'll have a section for part 3, comparison of company and competitor. Give me some write-up on the ratio analysis results of both, the strengths and weaknesses as a result of those analysis, and your graph chart with your explanations. And then you'll want to close your Word document with your separate reference page. Some final thoughts. You must provide at least 2 academic sources. One must be the SEC 10K, but you need another academic support source beyond your SEC 10K report. So if you're using, let's say, Target and Walmart, you'll have the Target SEC 10K report, and you'll have the Walmart SEC 10K report. That is only going to count as one academic source. You will need a second academic source to provide in this. So think about when you are making definitions. Think about when you're making statements of fact about a company, and go back to that company website could be a source. Another source could be Corporate Finance Institute to talk about the ratios and what they mean. Review your rubric to ensure you have met all of the criteria. Submit this through Lopeswrite. As always, follow APA 7th edition formatting for full credit. And review your work before submission to make sure you have grammar and writing issues resolved, including long paragraphs. Points are deducted for your presentation and your mechanics of writing. Include references in both your Excel and your Word document, and use the feedback I've provided you for continued improvement. Now, I'm going to pop back into one of your older slides. If you look in this slide, right below, after the balance sheet, we can see https sec.gov archives Edgar data, etc. That is the URL link for this company. So when you give me the data on the Excel spreadsheet, make sure you tell me where the data came from. And you will need that as far as you have regarding your references in your Word document as well. As always, if you have class questions, please post them for everyone's benefit. You can send me a message through Halo, and you can contact me for a 15, 30, or 60-minute meeting in Calendly. Have a great week. Put forth your best effort on this as always, and I'll see you in the classroom.